Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Football House on houseenterprise.com. I'm Sam Basil, joined alongside our usual Football House crew of Will Tondo, Jake Zimmer, Cole Hughes, and guys, I'm feeling so good this week. Football is back. We had some great games last weekend. We've got another huge slate coming up, starting actually tomorrow. We're broadcasting this on Wednesday, starting from Thursday, August 29th, all the way to Monday, September 2nd. We're getting a full 5 days in a row of top 25 and more college football action. Summer is winding down. I know a lot of people are pretty bummed about that, but look, sports are, they're kicking into high gear. We got football, we've got basketball probably about a month away with preseason and all that. The US Open's going on right now if you're living in the New York area. Oasis is back if any of you guys care about that. So just an overall, just great time to be alive. So I just want to know how you guys are doing. Cole, me and you have not been on a House Enterprise broadcast together in a while. It's been a few months. So how have you been, man? How's your summer been treating you?
It's been a minute, yeah, but so happy that college football is back, fired up. We got a little taste last weekend. Dublin, Ireland, starting off the season, which we'll get more into. It was awesome. Excited to be back on the pod with you boys and talk about this season. But everything's good, man. Been busy running around, but got to make time for college football now.
The end of summer is Groundhog's Day when you see Cole back. It's national championship in the week after he goes into slumber, and then right around this time when Cole comes back, the season's kicking off, and we're
six more weeks of crappy games, or do we get any great ones for?
Having the upset right off the bat, because it was. They always play the game in the NFL where it's like the similar faces in new places where you get into the part of the season where, the preseason, you're like, oh shit, like Jameis Winston's on the Browns. Last week, having Florida get upset was that situation for me of like, oh wow, we have an expanded playoff this year, and like they probably can and still make the playoffs. Which that was Kirk Herbstreit's tweet right after that. He's like, it was like the most Magic Johnson tweet ever of just like stating the obvious. Tough loss for the Noles over in Ireland to a good Georgia Tech team. The great news is with a new 12-team playoff, there's still plenty of opportunities to climb back in the bracket.
It's like you can tell too that Florida State is thinking the same thing, because like all week this week after the game they were posting like highlight videos and like promo videos of their time in Dublin, like how great it was. It's like you just got beat by Georgia Tech. Like
yeah.
But is this not like, I don't know, correct me if I'm open to debate. I think that's a good thing for this sport long term, right? Because it was so stupid. That was the biggest thing I hated about this sport. And I have always been a casual when it comes to college football. And I hated that you lose one game and your season's done. Like, that's objectively really stupid. So I'm glad it's going to feel really weird, but I'm glad we're moving past that,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with like a committee, because I'm all for the expanded playoffs. But now, as we were just joking off before, it's like the Big Ten has some dogs in it. Like, are we just going to see 6 Big Ten teams in this college football playoffs? And then like the other 6 being the SEC? Like Alabama's going to come in with like two or three losses, even though Saban's gone. Like they're just going to be like dynasty.
Yeah, no, I think it's good the way they set it up too, that the top 4 teams are going to be the conference champs. So, if some team goes on a run and they win their conference championship, they're automatically in. There's no questions asked. And then that leaves kind of, the other 8 spots open for, at-large teams, at-large bids. So I think it's going to work itself out. I think things are going to change so many times throughout the season. I mean, we're not even at week 1 yet. And, we're talking about how Florida State lost. Like, they could very easily get back into it. Like we've been talking about, but things are going to go up and down and all over the place throughout the season. And, there's going to be a lot of programs that have the opportunity to get one of those 12 spots, which is just awesome to see.
So when UConn goes on a run and wins the Big 12 in a couple years, they'll be the 4 seed. That means that's good.
Keep dreaming.
Yeah. So for those of you who are this might be your first time kind of getting yourself reacclimated to the college football world over the after this summer. Just to break it down in the simplest terms, the new college football format, college football playoff format, I should say, 12 teams. The top 5 conference champs will get an automatic bid to the playoff. Top 4 conference champs obviously will get a bye into the second round, and that fifth ranked conference champ can be any seed from 5 through 12. So if a lot of you were watching the first college game day of the season, I believe they were putting up some projections, and a lot of people were projecting Boise State out of the Mountain West to be that 5th conference champ, and they had them at the 12th seed. So if you're a group of 5 team, you're not only are you playing to win, but you're playing to look good in the best conference you can possibly be in, and not only just get into the playoff, but also get a good seed. You're fighting for 2 things at once, which I think is really interesting. Even though I am a guy, not to be that contrarian, where if I had complete say over how things were going in college football, I think I still would have liked a 14 playoff. I do like the idea that you have to be at your best at all times, and a loss, even a week 0 loss, like Florida State endured this past weekend, like that could have derailed their season in previous years. I didn't think that was necessarily something that needed to change in college football. I liked that feeling of every week being a playoff game. At the same time, though, I'm open to change. I'm ready to see, how this 12-team playoff.
I don't mind that take, Basil. I think the only thing is, if you look at Florida State last year, right, they did do everything that they needed to, and they were perfect, and they didn't even get an opportunity to get in. So I get what you're saying. You want the 4 best teams, and that's what it was. But there was some room in the previous college football playoff format for there to be some questions or controversy. And I think now that we have the 12 team, it's going to eliminate all that. And I think you're not going to be hearing so much about, did the committee get it right? I think it's going to be more concrete. So.
Absolutely. And I think, if I can, kind of knock myself a little bit, I mean, I was very opposed 4 years ago to, I think it was 4 years ago or 3 years ago, to the expansion of the NFL playoffs. I mean, I didn't really like the idea of adding a 3rd wild card. I thought the 6-team, per conference format was almost perfect. And now I really feel like, the 17 playoff is better. So I'm ready to be open. I'm ready to warm up to it. I felt like 12 was just a little bit too much too quickly. I would have loved to see I would have loved to see a 16 playoff first. I mean, maybe an 18 playoff, but there are some other, more detail-oriented things that I don't like about the playoff system, but I don't want to get too bogged down in that. I just want to, celebrate the start of the 2024 season. We can get into that, later in the year. But as we go through, let's get into a little bit more detail about this Florida State game. And, we say that now this won't derail, their chances at getting into the playoff this year. But let's talk about what they need to do to kind of get back on track for, a potential ACC championship and a potential just, at-large playoff bid. So, Cole, where do you think Florida State really struggled against Georgia Tech here?
I mean, I think it was their D-line. I think Georgia Tech, the Yellow Jackets, they definitely ran the ball very well against them. Even the coach, Brent Key, after the game, one of the reporters had asked him, they were, as an old offensive lineman, how do you feel about, how you guys did on the ground? And his answer was, run the damn ball. Are you kidding me? So I think, up front, it might be a little bit of an issue, because I don't think that Florida State played particularly bad. Like, they just didn't play good enough. I think Georgia Tech played better, and they ran the ball. Jamal Haynes, Georgia Tech's running back, was electric, and I think he ran for over 100 yards. I'm not sure exactly what the final stat line was, but I mean, look, it was a gritty game. I mean, they didn't have a lot of possessions each. I think there were like 7 possessions on each side, and that just comes down to, the trenches. And I think that Georgia Tech won that battle, and I think that that's what Florida State's going to have to focus on. They're definitely going to get their offensive going. Like DJU is going to put up points. They're going to be an electric offense. It's just a matter of, can they stop other offenses? Can their defense step up? Because I think if they get into games where it's a close game or if it's a shootout, they might run into some issues. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like for me, I don't know. I almost felt – now I watched the second half of this game. I did not watch the first half. It just felt like no team put the game away at any point. And I think Florida State had several opportunities in the second half to go and do that, right? I mean, you can't come up empty as a number 10 team in the nation. I don't care who it's against. You can't come up empty and score nothing in the third quarter, right? You got to get on the board. You got to find a way. And I thought, to your point, Cole, DJU I thought he looked good. He's had a bit of an underwhelming go of it the past couple of years. I think he rebounded quite nicely at Washington State, but still underwhelming, right? So it's a kid with high expectations. If you want to live up to those, and this is a huge legacy year for DJU. This is his third high-end Division I school. You got to go and find those opportunities to put the game away, right? You just can't leave your opponent the football, tie game, 2 minutes left in that high stakes of a game, in my opinion, right? That's just, you can't do it as Florida State. So that's what I walk away with that.
Yeah, I was going to agree on both points, but leaning more towards the DJ stuff. I mean, 19 for 27, 193 yards, like a fine game, but this is your third school. Florida State has that chip on the shoulder of like, we should have been part of the playoffs last year, right? Coming in to drop that dud right off the bat, it's, you're going to have to be a 250 plus yard quarterback each and every week. And your schedule, I was just trying to pull that up now, isn't necessarily that strong. You obviously have a Clemson later in the season, and of course Notre Dame. But like other than that, the ACC is kind of a cakewalk for Florida State. So to come down already to Georgia Tech, I was considering as a pick, I'm like, does Boston College make things interesting?
I was going to say that for later, and that people forget what happened last year. I'm about 8 miles away from where Florida State almost got upset the shit out of last year, 31-29 when they were number 6, and that was the team that wanted to be in the national title game. I'm not going back there, but who's to say that's not going to happen this week, right? This is a test now for Florida State. It's kind of like it's a joke on Twitter. A lot of it, they're like, oh, BC has the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever, but everything's on the table now.
Yeah, look, I mean, looking at Florida State's schedule too, it really isn't that much of a cakewalk. I mean, they got BC this week, which obviously they should beat, right? But how do they come back? How do they bounce back from the loss last week? But still on their schedule, I mean, they got SMU, which was a good team, and we're going to talk a little bit about them as well because they played this past weekend. But SMU, they got North Carolina, Miami, Florida, Notre Dame, and then Florida at the end of the year, right? And these are games that could go either way. So, I mean, with already one loss in the loss column against you, I mean, you got to get going at some point, right? And like you guys are saying, I totally agree. Like the offense definitely needs to produce more in order for them to, be in the discussion and, be at the top of the ACC. But I also don't want to take away from Georgia Tech. I think that they are a really good team. They performed really well last year against ranked opponents. And I think that they came out, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. I think they're going to be a factor in the ACC.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of teams that, want to be a factor in the ACC in their first year in the ACC, obviously not opening their season against another team in the ACC. How many times can I say ACC in one sentence? But SMU getting a 29-24 win over Nevada. Cole, your ponies, how do you feel like they looked in week 0?
Scared me a little bit. I'm going to be honest. It was a little worrisome. I mean, Preston Stone, great quarterback. I'm not too worried, right? Because they did put up over 400 yards of offense against Nevada. But what does worry me is their third down efficiency was not good. I think they were 5 for 12. And the fact that they didn't lead in the game until the last minute when Preston Stones threw a touchdown to take the lead, they were down the entire game, whether it was tied or they were trailing, and they didn't take the lead until that final minute. So I don't know if they're just, shaking off the cobwebs. They had a great year last year. They have a couple guys back, including their quarterback Stone and some playmakers on offense and defense, but a little worrisome how they came out of the gate. It'll be interesting to see how they play down the stretch. And look, like you guys said, it's their first year in the ACC. I mean, you're not playing, no-name teams. You're playing some pretty solid competition. So we'll see if they can size up and match up. I hope they do. I'm rooting for them. I love their coach, and I hope they do well.
Yeah. And wrapping up week 0, just two other quick results that, were interesting, but I don't really think will have much of an effect on this year's playoff race. Obviously, Hawaii taking down Delaware State 35-14, and our first FCS victory over an FBS school in Montana State against New Mexico. They pulled off the bye game victory 35-31 at New Mexico. I mean, anytime a double A school beats a single A school in college football, I think it's is it double A? I forget. I mean, those aren't even used anymore. But anyway, anytime an FCS school beats an FCS school, it's always a fun thing. Not the most surprising considering how good of an FCS school Montana State is. I mean, anybody from the Big Sky, I think, has a chance of beating a group of a middle of the pack to lower group of 5 team in a lot of situations, but still a very fun result. So as we head into week 1 proper of the 2024 college football season, I want to kind of reflash on the screen our preseason Football House top 25. For all of you that have not seen this yet, you can check it out on houseenterprise.com/the blog at our college football preview hub. The 4 of us plus Peter DiBiase, shout out Peter, voted on this year's preseason top 25. And our top 4 schools, I think, pretty standard. Georgia, unanimous number 1, followed by Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas. And then we've got a couple teams that I think are going to be really close in the pack. Obviously, Florida State, they're probably going to take a dip after this week, even if they do get a win. Reigning national champs, Michigan, number 10. And then, a couple schools, people are talking about Miami to possibly make a big run. They're sitting at 18th. Texas A&M sitting over at 19th. And I really like Kansas State at 20th. I think that's going to be they're going to be a really interesting player in this year's Big 12, considering this is the first Big 12 without Texas and Oklahoma. So for you guys, looking at this preseason top 25, aside from, Florida's potential downward movement after the end of this week, what kind of jumps out to you, and where do you see a couple programs kind of making their baseline at their current ranking and working their way up?
I think USC is going to obviously have an interesting matchup. That is our game of the week against LSU. It's also their obvious first season in the Big Ten. In my dynasty right now, shout out college football, NCAA 25. I am the Wisconsin Badgers, and they are my rival. Should have never left the Pac-12. That's all I have to say. But it's obviously a new season for Lincoln Riley. And of course, without, a Caleb Williams and coming off the season that they just had, I think this is a very interesting start. I don't see them creeping up much higher, to be completely honest. I think the loss won't knock them out of the top 25, but I don't think they're going to move that much further. So that'd be the biggest one I would say this week that has implications. But there's also other implications. I mean, that Georgia-Clemson game right off the bat, can Dabo make an upset for everybody? I don't know. I'm riding with Georgia. I mean, how can you not ride against Georgia and Carson Beck and everybody? So those are my biggest 2 that I'm keeping an eye out this week.
I think the question of which team, I like how you phrase that, Basil, like which one takes this as their baseline and moves up. I mean, the glaring thing to me here is Michigan, right? This is a team that won the national championship last year, obviously. This is a team with a lot of turnover. And to be ranked 10, I mean, you have, if I'm on that roster, if I'm Sharon Moore, right, you got a little chip on your shoulder here. It's it's billboard material. It's, hey, we won the national title last year. Everybody hates it. I see your expression, Tondo. I don't agree with it.
The whole team's gone.
I know, but I get that. That's a big part of it. But I think it's a prove it year for Sharon Moore, and just to prove that, like, hey, I can take this gauntlet and move it on in the right direction. Like, I know that all of their good guys are gone,
including Connor Stalions.
Yeah, Connor Stalions. Yes, that's the biggest loss they had.
But that's like LSU, the Joe Burrow year, when all 22 starters got drafted, and they're like, "Why aren't we the number 1 seed?" It's like, no shit, no one's here.
I know. I just think that's...
I see where you're coming from, but yeah. Michigan's lucky they even have a ranking, because that shit should have been swiped. Suspension season.
Where did you put them? I'm curious.
Michigan?
Yeah.
I had them 10.
Okay, cool. I did have them 12. Yeah, you're like, oh, Michigan's lucky they have a ranking.
No, I'm just saying in terms of like if they even can compete in the playoffs. Like I love the Connor Stalions story. I think every team should have a Connor Stalions. You have a guy who literally, I don't know if anyone's seen the documentary yet, but he wanted to be a Michigan Wolverine because of his mama, and he made the manifesto. And you know, if Bryant had a guy that was so dedicated to take over FCS football because he just loved the Bryant Bulldogs, I would be ecstatic.
I would too. Side note on Bryant, we're not in the FCS talk yet, but they've got two guys in the NFL right now.
Hey,
Three. Tom Kennedy, Kenny Dyson, who's playing for the Panthers, and Buffalo Joe.
Did Kenny make the 53?
I don't know. He might have got cut. I didn't see. I know Buffalo Joe Andreessen made the Buffalo Bills, so shout out him. He might lead the league in tackles this year. That's no bullshit. I do think
the field on the map. We love that.
I love it. No, Basil, that's I'd say Michigan. I will also say I'm putting this out into the universe, and I hope Lane Kiffin proves me wrong here, but I think Ole Miss is too high. I think they are too high here. I think they are in for a reality check pretty soon. They play Furman, who went 10-3 last year. I'm not confident enough to bet this, but don't be surprised if the Furman Paladins walk off that field chanting and celebrating and all this stuff. I just have a weird feeling in my gut about Ole Miss. They seem too high here.
I think
you had Ole Miss at 15th, so I understand why you are saying that. I also, for the record, I had Michigan the highest out of the 5 voters. I had them at 7th, so I think I'm a little higher on Michigan. But
what did Cole just say?
I think you're so wrong about Ole Miss, but
wow,
yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to be an absolute wagon this year.
Really?
I do. Yeah, I think Jackson Dart, he's nasty. I think he could win the Heisman. He's my early favorite. I mean, look, the SEC is still loaded, and you're getting Texas and Oklahoma coming in. Texas, it's between Georgia and Texas. There's no doubt, right? And that's why they're in the top 4, in our top 4. Alabama, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Saban's gone, right? But they still got Jalen Milroe. But I like Ole Miss. I don't know. I think up front that they're huge. Actually, Saban was talking about it the other day on Pat McAfee's show that Ole Miss, the reason that they lost the games that they did last year was because they didn't have the size or speed up front. They had it at the skill positions, right? But they couldn't keep up with the Georgias or the Alabamas of the SEC, in the trenches. So I think this year through the transfer portal, they've gotten some guys. So I think they're going to compete. I like where they are now. I don't know. Michigan, I think they belong where they are. Missouri is another team that is kind of interesting in the SEC because you got Brady Cook and Luther Burden. I mean, it's just there's so many teams in the SEC. Like Tondo was saying earlier, are we going to have 6 teams from the Big Ten in the playoff? Like the SEC is still the top dog, in my opinion, right? And there's a lot of teams that could be in the playoff there, but a lot of other interesting teams on this list. You got Utah in the Big 12. I think they're a favorite there. Cam Rising's coming back from an injury. He was out all last year. They had like a revolving door with quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to have him back. I think teams like even at the bottom, right? Arizona is an interesting team this year. Kansas and Louisville, they both had successful years last year. The basketball schools, how do they, do they maintain that success or do they take a step back? So there's a lot of question marks about a lot of these teams. But I think if you look at these 25 teams right now, I could see any of them in the playoff. It depends, conference games and what happens. But it's going to be interesting to see how they move up and down.
I got a question for the crew too. Speaking of that, LSU at 13. How hot is Brian Kelly's seat right now? Or not hot at all?
I think it got a little bit hotter now that there's a 12-team playoff. I mean, I think you can say that for a lot of coaches. I think you can say that for, in a lot of different conferences, because now it's like, okay, I have to take time. I have to build this is in the 14 playoff era, right? He comes in to LSU. It's like, okay, I gotta take some time to build this program. There's a big difference in making it into a top 10 team in the country on a consistent basis and making it a top 4 team in the country on a consistent basis. It takes years to be, it takes years to be both, but it takes longer to be top 4. But now you're a consistent top 10 team. That means you're a consistent playoff team. That means you're a consistent national championship contender. So if you can go do that and you just keep getting into the first round of the playoffs year after year after year, that's a lot more severe of a plateau than making, back in the old model, the New Year's 6 year after year after year with maybe, 2 playoff appearances out of 6 New Year's Day game appearances, right? So I think for LSU, I think it becomes a lot tougher, but you could say that for pretty much any Power 4 team at this point.
I mean, look, I don't think Brian Kelly or even a guy like, Franklin over at Penn State are on the hot seat, but these guys are names that you're kind of like, is it going to happen? And again, it's week 1 before an expanded playoffs. Like, I'm definitely way over myself, but it's also like, those are 2 teams that like I could see make the playoffs. I could see win week 1 of the playoffs. I don't see them beating the 4 teams up top right now.
Yeah, it's fair to say that it shortens the timeline just a little bit.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought that up, Tondo. James Franklin and Penn State. I mean, look, last 5 or 6 years, Penn State, they've had good teams, solid teams. They just haven't been able to get past Michigan or Ohio State, right? And there hasn't really been much discussion about him being on the hot seat. Like, he's kind of got job security there for some reason. So I don't know. I think the South is a little more intense, right? They kind of rushed Les Miles out of there back in the day. They definitely rushed Coach O out, which might have been for other reasons, but that's neither here nor there. Love you, Coach O. Go Tigers. But I'm just thinking, I think the South has higher expectations, and like Basil's saying, like when it was 4 teams, right? Okay, maybe you didn't make it in, but now that there's 12 teams, I think both Penn State and LSU, both those fan bases and those boosters and those programs are going to expect them to not only make the playoff, but be competing, making it to the meaningful rounds of, the semis or the national championship. So
it's interesting to hear you say that, Cole, because like my perception on this, and call me crazy if you wish, but LSU seems like one of the most secure jobs in football, right? Like, yeah, I get you have a fair point that Les Miles, I don't know, maybe he was rushed out. Was he? Sure. I don't know enough about the situation. Coach O had his own stuff, right? But Saban left for greener pastures, right? I don't know. This seems like a very secure job. And, reading up on Brian Kelly and just understanding what he's done in that state, not only, he's the highest paid football coach, I think, still in the NCAA, if I'm not mistaken. So they have a lot of skin in the game here. But what he's done is very comparable in my eyes to what Nick Saban did in Alabama in the past 20 years, which was he basically closed off the borders of Louisiana and the South to his school, right? Like anyone that grew up and it was a halfway decent football player in Louisiana the last couple of years, like his roster's combing with Louisiana guys right now. So I don't know. It seems secure. That's my thought. It would take something drastic to like an implosion. Like if they lose 5 or 6 games this year, in my eyes, for him to go.
Nick Saban did win a championship his 3rd season.
He did. Now that is a very important caveat. And if that didn't happen, who knows? Would he be staying longer at LSU? I don't know.
And right? Brian Kelly, he was there for a decade at Notre Dame, but what did Notre Dame really do?
Yeah, no, the situations are what I don't know. Did Notre Dame did they go to a CFP or no? They might have went to 1 or 2, right?
In his time, was he around for?
Well, he was also there for the now vacated national championship game appearance and Kali Matrix national championship, if anyone cares about that. But yeah, look, a lot of interesting stuff. Again, I feel like we've covered a lot of stuff regarding the 12-team playoff, and I think you guys have brought up some really great points. What sucks right now is we really just don't know because again, we are in such new territory. We are in completely uncharted waters in college football. So the only thing that we can really do is sit back, watch some games, and make some picks. So let's kind of get into all of our cards for this week. Starting off with you, Mr. CEO, Editor-in-Chief, House Enterprise, Will Tondo. You've got some really good picks for us. Take us through your standard card. Give us your locks, including your FCS pick, and then hold off on Game of the Week. We can see your Game of the Week pick right there, obviously, but just hold off on talking about it for now.
All right, so I'll kick it off. Penn State -8.5 over West Virginia. The Nittany Lions have now covered the spread in 6 straight games against Big 12 opponents, and they're 15-4-1 in their last 20 games. West Virginia has not done very well against Big 10 teams. They're 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 games. And I'm just really loving Drew Aller this year. I think this is, we just talked about, obviously, James Franklin's security and stuff. I think when you have a quarterback like that under his belt, it definitely helps keep him there. Now just obviously excelling. I think this should be an easy win. So get the points for Penn State. Next one, Nebraska -27 against UTEP. I'm going against my morals already on week 1, starting the season hot. The double digit 25-point spreads. I usually am against it. I'm feeling frisky. I like this Nebraska team on the defensive side. They were top 15 last year. They returned, I think, 7 or 8 key starters. They have a former 5-star recruit on offense in Dylan Raiola, who might be one of their best talented passers in recent Nebraska history. Nebraska's not really, budding quarterback fancies, right? But I think this is good. UTEP is a rebuilding program. I like the blowout to start off. Matt Rule's this tenure again for Nebraska. Next, Wisconsin, Western Michigan. I'm going to take the over 56.5. Now, I did not have it as a pick, but I think Western Michigan is going to cover the spread. I believe it's 20-something, but I didn't want to list it. I'll take the over. Tyler Van Dyke is now the QB for Wisconsin, former ACC Rookie of the Year. I think Luke Fickell definitely didn't have the best season last year in Wisconsin. One of the reasons why I took over the program as Till Wando in NCAA college football. I'm just kind of a sponsorship plug right now. One of the reasons why I took over, but I think Luke Fickell also inherited a program that just wasn't fitting his style. So bringing in guys that, fit that mold like a Van Dyke is pretty good. One of the reasons why I did not take the spread, though, is because Fickell came out and said this about Western Michigan. They got a new offensive coordinator. They have a new defensive coordinator. They have a new special teams coordinator. So what do you know? I don't know. That doesn't really feel like a team that is going to come out and kick the doors in by 40 points. So I like the under. Oh, I had it as no. Did I have it as? I had it as under in the card, right? I had it in over in my notes. I like the under of 56.5 because under 56.5 has happened every year in a Wisconsin opener since 2016.
Wow.
So I'm riding the data there. Next one, wearing the hat. Hook 'em. I'll be down in Austin next week. Unfortunately, will not get to see a game like last year, but I still will be riding Texas. Texas versus Colorado State. I take Colorado State, though, plus 32.5. I think that's a very talented team. I think the Rams are capable of putting up plenty of points, especially with Troy Horton as their wide receiver, and I think their defense is fairly strong, and I will take the over. My lock of the week is Colorado minus 9.5 versus North Dakota. I think North Dakota is arguably one of the best FBS programs in, arguably the past decade, right? And this is a team that is going to come out and want to win this game more than any other team in week one, I would say. I think this is a must win and a must blow the doors off game for Deion Sanders. I think his expectations were through the roof last year. I think the past couple weeks has not been also a great PR for Colorado as well, from wanting them to take some Saudi NIL money to people just talks about like the toxicity of the locker room. I think there's just a lot of narrative going around in Colorado. So I'm going to take them to yes, Basil.
Wait, so you're talking? Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking your lock of the week. Sorry,
That's my lock of the week. Yeah. I just easy quick for Colorado State, but my lock of the week, yes, is the 9.5 over North Dakota. I think this is also just for some Giants and Pats fans in the room. Obviously, you guys just have Drake May and Joe Milton, but there's still some mock drafts of Shedeur Sanders might be coming to you at 1 if all hell breaks loose. I might see Shedeur Sanders in a Giants uniform as well. We don't know. We're both carrying 6 quarterbacks between 2 teams, and none of them are good. So we shall see. But this is obviously big. He's one of the top-rated quarterbacks in the country. So, let's see a game with over 300 yards in the air and tell people that, we're in it to win it. And then my other lock is Albany money line versus LIU, just because of I was bullied in the text chain. Everyone was taking it. I thought that. So
hey, it's a good pick.
I'm going to take the Great Danes to smash the Sharks.
Dude, they're gonna fuck them up. They're gonna.
So this is the second time you've mentioned your college football 25 dynasty with Wisconsin. Now you started with Buffalo.
And
you had humble Mac beginnings.
Humble Mac beginnings. A real lunch pail guy, Tilwando.
Blue collar, get your hands dirty, little pine tar, that kind of stuff.
Film nut.
Wait, did you take Chris Hanold on as your assistant coach?
I brought him in under some special coordinator stuff. My Connor Stallion of the Buffalo.
Perfect. I thought I saw him sneaking around some of the Toledo and Bowling Green games, so there might be some sanctions.
I brought a Heisman winner to Buffalo.
Here's the real question: how many top 5 recruiting classes have you had, and have you locked down the state of Wisconsin?
Yes,
like Mr. Kelly has down in the bayou.
That's damn right.
In Wisconsin, I am the 17th ranked in the country. Now, recruiting in this game is not fucking easy. I will tell you that. The borders are locked in Wisconsin, though. I would say 60% of my recruits are Wisconsin through and through.
Well, you better start looking over at Michigan.
I did grab a 3-star wide receiver from Warwick, Rhode Island. Shout out Frank Vale.
We're really getting into character here.
Recruiting is tough. I'm not going to spoil what happened in season 4, but let's just say we did a very good job.
So my question to you is, and if the answer is no, then the follow up is, how many people do you think this is happening to? Where are you? At what point in the season are you going to start watching Wisconsin and reality and the virtual world start to kind of blend into one, and you kind of lose focus on which Wisconsin you're actually watching, yours or the real Wisconsin.
I don't think Luke Fickell and Tyler Van Dyke are my style. I am an air raid, and I need a quarterback that can run, which is very not Wisconsin. I mean, I hear the problem with the game is the announcers are very buggy. It's the same shit. And every week I just hear how Wisconsin's known for their running backs. Meanwhile, my quarterback has like 5,000 yards in the air and like 2,000 yards rushing. I don't even use the running back. So I still see the virtual and real reality as separated.
Yeah. My thing about announcers in sports video games is it is 2024. We've been having sports video games with announcer calls arguably since the mid to late 1990s, right? And I understand that this game is supposed to be the next gen of the next gen, but I feel like it's going to be a long time before we have a sports game where, if you're playing for a while, the commentary does not get repetitive and just a little bit robotic. You know what I mean? I think it sounds great from what I've seen. I don't have the game, but it sounds really good, compared to 2K21, but I mean, it's such a hard thing, I think, to replicate. But yeah, let's get into my picks for this week. I went a little light, but I think these picks are really interesting. Like you, Tondo, I did avoid. Well, I mean, I usually try to, and I did this week just because I just hate looking at 40-point spreads. That's kind of what's tough about week one is I'm so excited for football to be back, but aside from the Sunday game, the Monday game, and any inter top 25 matchups, you're getting a lot of potential blowouts, potential 3 to 4 touchdown games. So it just makes it a little hard to pick something that's really interesting. But I think I found a couple of solid ones. So first off, I'm going to go Lafayette plus 5.5 versus Buffalo. The actual line right now, I believe, is at 3.5. I teased it to +5 because I think this just makes this something really interesting to throw onto your card. Lafayette is Tana's calling me a Buffalo hater, but
hey, that was me. I said that.
Was that you?
Yeah.
Oh, that was Jake. Sorry, you're calling me a Buffalo hater, but look, Buffalo, they don't have Tilwando at the helm anymore, man. They lost to Fordham last year. They already lost to a team in the Patriot League, and this Lafayette team are the reigning Patriot League champs, right? I think they're a really solid team. They put up a lot of points against opponents in conference play. They did okay against Boston College last season. I think they could, keep this one close against Buffalo. I'm not putting them down for the money line, but I would if you're a person who likes to add teasers to a parlay or something, and you want something a little saucy, I would go Lafayette here. Take some extra points on them against Buffalo. Speaking of Florida State, I have them winning this game. They're at home this week. It's not going to be a repeat like last year where they went to Boston. Boston gave them a game. In the 14 playoff era, if they had lost that game to Boston, that would have been a season killer right there, right? And they won by 2 points. So that was really tough. I see this as a get-right game and one that they're going to win. At the same time, I don't think they're going to blow them out. I think they're still going to take some time to find their offense. And even though they're not going to blow them out, a 2-touchdown win for Florida State still means that Boston College covers. So I don't see why you shouldn't take that at plus 16.5. It feels a little trap game-ish. I feel like, the books might, it's one of those, as Bill Simmons likes to say, it's a little bit of a Vegas line. It seems a little too good to be true in some ways, but I think based on how this game went last year and how Florida State is transitioning from 23 to 24 on a little bit of shaky legs, I think this is a fair margin of victory for them. So I'm going to take them to win 35 to 21, and they're going to win, but BC is going to cover. Georgia Clemson, I have under 48.5 in this one. I think this one's going to be fairly close. I see Georgia still covering, but I just think they're going to, this is going to be one where they're just going to kind of, run the score up a little bit on Clemson, and then they're going to take a little bit of back seat. So, again, like a 35 to, 10 game, you're going to hit the under on that. So I'm taking the under there. Notre Dame, I'm taking +3 versus Texas A&M. I understand that this game is in College Station. I think this Notre Dame team is, nothing to mess with this year. We talked about teams, making their baseline in the top 25 and then working their way up. I think with a team like Michigan, right, they want to do that. They want to, they want to work their way up. But I also feel like, considering all the changeover that they've had, they're cool coasting at 10 and still getting into the playoffs. Notre Dame at 6, they could chill there. They've struggled to get into the top 4 in years past, so they could take it easy and go, hey, look, we have a path to the playoffs right now. We just have to not, just completely crash and burn. I don't think they're going to want to do that. I think they're going to want to take that starting position at 6, move into the top 4. Obviously, they can't get a top 4 seed, but move into the top 4 in something like the AP poll, be a consistent top 4 team in the coaches poll, and work their way up. Because as these strong teams that are in conferences work their way up through the poll, they're going to have a lot easier time, looking good in the voters' eyes because they have conference opponents to beat. Notre Dame doesn't do that, so they have to get a big win against a team like Texas A&M early. So I think they're going to at least cover +3, and if you want to throw them down for the money line, I think that's a fair way to go too. For my FCS pick, I'm going with Holy Cross getting a win over URI. Holy Cross, Patriot League powerhouse. Obviously, I'm a Fordham fan. They're Holy Cross's rival. I don't really like picking the Crusaders that much, but I want to shout out my sister. She, she's getting her career started with the United States Marines next week. So she is a Holy Cross graduate. So shout out my sister. We're going to go with Holy Cross for this one time and not as much for the rest of the season. My lock of the week, I'm going Miami -2.5 versus Florida. Again, Miami, a team that I think is in a good position right now, but like Notre Dame, even though they're in a conference and they can get some good conference wins, especially in this year's ACC, they cannot just sit comfortably. They have to get statement wins early on and build and build and build. And I think even though Florida is not, they're not going to be a top contender in the SEC this year, I think, getting a win against a big in-state rival like this, who they haven't played in 5 years, by the way, will be a great way to kind of start this season off with a bang. And obviously, I'm holding off on my game of the week picks.
I always wonder if Sabrina chose Holy Cross just because you went to Fordham.
I don't think so.
It wasn't the Marine Corps scholarship. It wasn't the great education. It was
Spider brother.
My older brother goes to Fordham, and I need to make sure our football team is better.
No, I you know what? I don't think so. I think
there's a possibility.
Looking at, there could be a possibility. I think she was looking at Fordham as well because, there is like an ROTC presence at Fordham.
Shout out Basil freshman year.
So there is a, she was looking at a ton of schools. I think she could have taken that scholarship in like a lot of different places, but Holy Cross is where she settled on. And I think it's fun because, now that rivalry kind of exists in the Basil household, it kind of gives the Basil family a reason to go to a couple tailgates every year. So that's been kind of fun, But yeah, so that's my card for this week. Let's get into Mr. Zimmer. What you got for us?
Okay, some crossover here, but happy to Happy to piggyback off some points. The Miami point, I'm right with you, Basil. Right. I was looking at who's at quarterback, and it's Cam Ward, who came in from Washington State.
Yeah.
7,000 passing yards, 50 touchdowns over the last 2 years. I think it could work out nicely. And talk about a guy who's on the hot seat. Mario Cristobal, I don't know. Is he still on the hot seat? Yeah, I think so. Feels like every year he's on the hot seat.
He did hire a game management coach, though. I read that the other day.
About fucking time, because he doesn't know how to manage games as the head coach of a football team, which, pardon my French here, but that's a pretty big necessity.
It's Tondo on the sideline with an Xbox controller.
Yeah, it's just still Wando.
Stadium Pulse. You gotta be aware of it.
Does anyone know what Tondo's plans are this weekend? Is he down in Florida? That's he's just going on the road with Miami all year.
That would be a hell of a job. Just to be
Mario Cristobal's game management coordinator. Be like, yo, take a timeout, dude. That you know who needs that is Joe Mazzulla. That's who really needs that.
He's a champion, though.
He is a champion, but he's a champion. He's got a ring, and he needs a game management coach. All three are true. All right. So Miami, I'm all in on here. TCU, Stanford, I've got a couple in on here. Look, TCU, I sat and thought about this, but TCU's got new defensive leadership. They had a piss poor year last year. I think they went 3-6 in conference play. A year removed for being in the national title game. Bounce back year for TCU. I think they might have been overwhelmed by whatever it is they had going on. Lots of transfers in the mix this year too. They added a bunch of leadership for TCU. They're also notorious for shootouts against non-conference games last year, non-conference opponents. I counted 153 points over their first 4 games last year. That's almost 40 points a game. So I have the over in that game as well. Yeah, that should be an interesting one out west. Western Kentucky plus 33 against Alabama. I'm fully banking on Kalen DeBoer to just take a few drives to get his stuff together. I think Alabama's going to win this game, make no mistake. I also think Western Kentucky is a good team. They won a bowl game last year. They kept it close with Liberty. So I don't know, this 33 spread, however tantalizing it may be for Alabama, I think Western Kentucky can cover here. BC, Florida State. I don't want to put any coin on BC covering because that's where my heart is right now. But I will say, here's my biggest learning from Florida State this year. Their offense is it's slow. It's just a little slow. Like, maybe it's DJU's first game getting the new system. Maybe that's just who he is. Like, I got that same impression from him. Cole, correct me if I'm wrong. You watched him a lot more at Clemson and O State than I did, I'm sure, but it just looks methodical. It looks slow, right? He's a big dude. He's not going to scramble a bunch and like run around to make these jukes. He's just going to go a little slower. He's going to hand the ball off a lot. He's going to make passes that are short. He's not going to air it out, but he's just going to go slow.
He's going to be one hell of an NFL tight end in 6 years.
Yeah. He sure will. He sure will.
Look, out of all the quarterbacks that are in Division I football, he gets a lot of hype, and I'm not exactly sure why.
That's my thought too. Am I a bad person for thinking that? Like, it's probably because he has a big frame. Like, he's got the quarterback body. Like, he's probably got a high football IQ, but I just haven't been impressed. So that's all to say. With a couple of, the good thing about Florida State's defense is it's very staunch, right? Like they have a legit defense. They had a couple of slips, but in general, I thought they played pretty well against Georgia Tech for the most part. I love the under. Love me an under in this game. Provided that BC shows up and at least plays competitive football. Like, these guys need to bring something. If they roll,
Billy O, baby, Billy O's in the house. Let's go.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien, noted defensive legend, right? Former offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. Thank God that worked out the way it did.
Where did he have a job for like a hot second? Was it Ohio
State? And now it's Chip
State.
Kelly. Chip Kelly's their OC.
Kelly's at Ohio State. I'd missed that. Wow,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
God
what a world. How the mighty have fallen.
Players are transferring, coaches are transferring. Come on, let's go.
I think Chip Kelly needs a doc. Like, if we had to pick a coach to make a doc on, I don't know if he'd be number one, but he's had such. He's had a very interesting path. I don't know.
He could have stayed at Oregon forever. I actually think he could have stayed at Oregon forever, and he would have been far more famous than he is now, for sure.
Didn't he start at UNH? I'm pretty sure he started coaching at UNH.
Oh, damn. Like New Hampshire?
Yes.
Wow. Holy crap.
Alma mater of Dylan Laube. Shout out Dylan Laube.
Yep. Shout out.
He actually started out. I mean,
he started at Columbia, but he was the running backs coach at UNH in '92.
All right.
And he played at New Hampshire.
Oh,
no. Defensive back at New Hampshire.
Yeah, he played DB there, but he was a coach from '92 to 2006 in New Hampshire. And then he went from the UNH offensive coordinator job to Oregon offensive coordinator. That's a jump.
That's a huge jump. Even better.
And then the head coach a season later.
Good for him.
He started at UNH. Wild perspective here. 32 years before Dylan Laube graduated.
Wow. Hey, look, if Ohio State does what people think that they can do this year, he might be a head coach again.
Maybe he could. Who knows? Like, what an interesting career. I'm right with you, Basil. But let me finish out my card here. SEMO. That was the one game last week that I watched from start to finish. I watched SEMO absolutely demolish North Alabama. It was a Saturday night. It was on late. Girlfriend goes to bed. I'm like, yeah, screw it. I'll watch all of SEMO and North Alabama. Paxton DeLaurent is going to turn some heads this year. I watched a lot of SEMO football weirdly last year just because they played Bryant, was getting prepared. He was hurt for most of the year. Big quarterback. He's got a good arm on him. He basically everything that the opposite of DJU is. He looks good. And they also gave me head coach Tom Matukowicz gave one of the best quotes that any football coach has ever given me. He's a true football guy. They call him Coach Tuke. They were coming up to Bryant in November, and he said, "We're not here to see fall foliage. We're here to kick ass," which was an awesome football guy quote. He proceeded to lose by at least 3 or 4 touchdowns. But I think they've got it this year. Their guys are healthy. They had a really crappy year, and they have almost everybody back except Ryan Flournoy, who's with the Cowboys now. And they impressed me last week enough that I think they can cover a +9 against New Mexico State, who had a bit of an underwhelming year, and I'm not too high on this year.
And they lost to Montana State last week.
Who did? What? Oh, yeah, that's what. Yes, that's right. They FCS school they lost to. So let's pile it on and do it again. I don't care where this game is. SEMO might even win this game. I really do believe that. One of college football's more interesting rivalries over the past couple of years: Penn State versus West Virginia State, or West Virginia State. It's after 10 and my mind doesn't work. Penn State, West Virginia. Look, I just read up on the Drew Aller stuff. Like a lot of comments made about can he rise up to the occasion this year? I'm bought in on this kid, right? I think he's going to be a good quarterback for Penn State. Neil Brown even defended him, a couple days ago and saying, listen, he's getting a lot of unfair crap for being the next guy up at Penn State, but let him, sink or swim here. Another leading candidate for a guy on the hot seat is Neil Brown in this scenario. I think West Virginia, I feel they come out of the gates really hot. 3 years ago, was it when we started the show? We're talking about the backyard brawl and everybody's fired up. That's about the only time West Virginia has done anything of substance for me in the past 2 years. Has been, okay, let's beat Pitt and then let's move on. Right. And they have a gauntlet of a schedule, but I feel like time is crunching for West Virginia, and I just don't know how different their roster looks this year for me to confidently pick them here. So Penn State, I think, even though this game's on the road, -8.5, let's do it.
And their conference just got so much more crowded and so much more talented too. So it's an uphill battle.
It is. So I don't know. I'm concerned about West Virginia. I want them to be relevant. I want them to be good, but I just don't know if Neil Brown's going to keep his job here. And then UAlbany is going to kick the living daylights out of LIU for reasons already said. That's
all
the
right.
card.
Good card.
Thank you for the involvement, everybody. That was a very collaborative card session there. I like it.
Cole, what you got for us?
All right, a lot of repeats here, things we've already talked about, so I won't try to take up too much time. But Clemson, Georgia, going to be a hell of a game. It is at a neutral site at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. So I think that helps Clemson a little bit, even though it's in Georgia still. They're not at home at Sanford Stadium. So I think Clemson is an interesting team this year. A lot of people are doubting them. Dabo's gotten a lot of crap for not really embracing the transfer portal and going after guys. But I do think that they're going to keep it close. For some reason, I just think, Clemson's been kind of on a downturn the last couple of years, from where they were, in the years previous to that. I think they come out this first game. I do think Georgia will win the game, but I like them to keep it within 2 touchdowns. I think probably 10 points is more realistic. So I'm going to take Clemson plus 13.5. Penn State, West Virginia. We talked a lot about Coach Franklin, Drew Aller, West Virginia's woes. I know it's in Morgantown, but I'm taking Penn State 8 points. I think that's just a lock. Even though that's not my lock, I like them a lot. I think they're going to come out, try to make a statement, try to be one of those teams in the Big Ten this year, get over the hump and, compete in the playoffs now that it's expanded. So it starts this weekend with West Virginia, and I'll take the Nittany Lions to go in there and get that spread. Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Not really sure why Notre Dame is the underdog. I know it's at A&M, but I don't know. A&M, they haven't been impressive. Notre Dame, I love them. I'm never going to vote against them. I hate A&M. Glad Jimbo's gone.
I know. What are you going to do with yourself now that
still hate A&M? Still hate them, but
who do we ridicule? Like, which head coach do we have to ridicule this year?
Mike Elko. He's fucked now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm taking the Fighting Irish. I think they're going to have a good year as well again. And they got Riley Leonard now. He was at Duke last year. And actually last year when Duke played Notre Dame, he had one of the best games I've ever seen. He played unbelievable. And they almost beat Notre Dame. Or did they beat Notre Dame? I can't remember. They might have. I'm not sure. But Riley Leonard being in South Bend, that's huge for them. I think that they go in and they get the win on the road. Nebraska, Tondo talked about this with Dylan Raiola getting the starting job. I think the tides are turning for the Cornhuskers. I think Matt Rule is now going to be in his second year there. He took over last year after an abysmal performance by Scott Frost coaching the last couple of years at Nebraska. I just think this program, it's time for it to turn around. And I think Raiola he's getting a lot of comparisons that he looks like Mahomes. I don't know if he's going to be that good, but I think he's going to light it up against UTEP. His uncle, fun fact, is the offensive line coach for the Cornhuskers. So he's going to have those big boys up in front protecting his nephew, and I think he's going to put up a lot of points. So let's go Cornhuskers minus 27.5. Ohio, Syracuse. Ohio was a really good team last year in the MAC. They were 10-3. They didn't play in the MAC championship because Miami, Ohio was in it, and I think Toledo was the other team who also had great years, but they kind of went under the radar. Really good season, put up a lot of points. Syracuse has Kyle McCord transferring in from Ohio State. People forget about that. It's in Syracuse in the Dome, so you don't have to worry about elements or anything like that. Not that you have many in September, but you never know with rain. I think there'll be a lot of points scored. It might be a shootout, so give me the over 47.5. LSU, USC. We talked a little bit about this too. I think Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback for LSU, I think he's another quarterback in the SEC like Jackson Dart from Ole Miss to keep an eye out on. I think he's got a big arm, can make a lot of big plays. But USC too, Miller Moss, their starting quarterback last year in the bowl game, he went off. I think he threw for like 6 touchdowns in that game. So it's going to be interesting to see how he takes over, follows in Caleb Williams' footsteps. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. I do think LSU wins, but I do think it'll be a high-scoring game. So I'm taking the over there too. FCS, Albany, Great Danes are going to roll. Long Island, not going to be close. Excuse me. Lock of the week is Boise State versus Georgia Southern. We talked a little bit about them being that 5th conference team that might win the Mountain West. So I like them to start out strong and get a solid win against Georgia Southern, and then I'll wait for the game of the week, even though it's up there.
All right. And speaking of that game of the week, I'm going to leave your card on the screen because all 4 of us are feeling the exact same way about this week's game of the week. It is the lone Sunday game, USC versus LSU in Las Vegas at the home stadium of Dylan Laube.
Dylan Laube, yes.
Come on, guys.
The UNLV running Rebels?
Yeah, UNLV as well. But this is always a great part of week 1 of the college football season. We always get a Sunday game and a Monday game, and this Sunday game is really interesting. Fresh water for a lot of for both of these teams. A lot of guys from both programs going into the NFL this year. Obviously, USC being in that new conference. What are we expecting from both of these teams? Let me rephrase that question. How do these teams play in this game that determines, what our expectations are for them going into the rest of the year? Like, what are your expectations for USC and LSU going into this game? And with a win from either of them, how does that change your perspective on both programs?
If I can give a quick take first here, I mean, does this seem like both teams are in the same exact scenario here? It's like their defenses both kind of sucked last year. They both lose their star quarterbacks. Yeah, USC's was bad. But Cole, LSU's struck at worst times. What was that game they got walked off? It was like that 60-55. I forget who they were playing.
I forget.
It was just atrocious. They were up. It was back and forth. I turned my head and it's 54-48, and you look back and it's 60-54, right? But in a way, it feels like both these teams are in the exact same spots. Like the others looking at each other like, okay, is your defense, what are you doing on defense? Which is why I love the over here. You got 2 new quarterbacks. Now the question is, who's going to rise up to the occasion, right? Like Miller Moss, this is a great opportunity for him. But ultimately, I think LSU kind of just has that been there before factor, right? They were in more games last year. They were closer to being down the stretch, or closer to being a playoff team down the stretch. And I think just with the eye test, they're returning more than USC. So for me, that's why I'm taking LSU.
Are you talking about the game against Ole Miss, where Ole Miss
pretty much
walked off 55-49?
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah,
Ole Miss. That was a game where, like, I think I actually had some coin on LSU there, and that's what kind of swore me off to them last year. Maybe why subconsciously I hate Ole Miss so much. But yeah, I there were very much some times last year where I was looking at LSU and saying, where is their defense, right? But yeah. USC they've got some gaping holes in this defense that need to be figured out.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to Cole's point where it's like the SEC should still be the bully ball league in college football. The last time the Trojans matched up against an SEC opponent, 2016 against Alabama, it was a 52-6 loss. Obviously, a very different Pac-12 USC team. But again, if we're talking about differences, we have 2 teams that have new quarterbacks under the helm. However, USC does have a little bit more of inexperience on the offensive side. I just go back to that point where Brian Kelly of, I don't think his seat's hot. I don't think this seat makes it warm if he loses, but he sure as hell needs to come out with a win. So I think the 4 points should be an easy cover.
Yeah, I think there's higher expectations from the outside for LSU this year than there is for USC, and that you can tell that by the preseason rankings too. Just because USC, like you guys said, I mean they're a new team this year. One player I do want to keep an eye on for this game is Zachariah Branch from USC. He was one of their returners last year that was unbelievable. Had a couple TDs, returns, punt returns, kick returns. Very talented. He's one of their receivers. It'll be interesting to see how him and Miller Moss connect. And I don't know. I just think Lincoln Riley, he's got a whole canvas in front of him with a brand new team. What can he do? We'll be able to see, but I just think LSU just matches up better against them in this game, and I think that they get the victory.
And I think maybe you de-risk it with, you have both of these quarterbacks, this is their first, opportunity for starting, right? This is their role and exclusively theirs, where you had Garrett Nussmeier come in and blowouts last year, basically, and throughout his whole career. Miller Moss, I think to my knowledge, has played one game and he threw 6 touchdowns against, I forgot who they played in the bowl game last year, but both of those it's weird. You almost feel better about the guy that backed up Jaden Daniels than you feel about the guy that went number 1 overall, right? And that's just where my head's at now. I think Garrett Nussmeier has been, reliable, at least for LSU these past couple of years. And that certainly makes me feel a little bit better about choosing LSU here.
Yeah, so that's pretty much our week 1 slate. A lot of great stuff on the way. I want to finish off tonight with just, it's week 1. We've got a lot of football to play, a lot of football to watch for us. But what are your guys, a lot of expectations, a lot of things we have to learn about this new era of college football. I want everyone to go around and give a hot take. Starting off with you, Jake. Any bold predictions for the 2024 season?
Shit. You gonna make me slander Ole Miss again? I don't know. I think I've beat that horse.
Your words, man, not mine.
I think I don't know. Is this too hot of a take that Louisville ends up in the top 15? Like I think Louisville's gonna turn a lot of heads. People are probably gonna, have people had enough of Louisville? I don't know. Either them or Kansas will end up in the top 15. Kansas might be more of a hotter take, having gone through the gauntlet over the years and now finally returning to relevance over the past 2 years. I would say either Louisville or Kansas are in the top 15.
Nice. I like that one. Cole?
Oregon Ducks win the national championship.
All right.
Love Dylan Gabriel. I think he's going to be huge there. Dan Lanning, he's a savage. I think they're hungry. They had a great year last year. Couldn't get it done. I think they have an electric offense, going to put up a ton of points. Ohio State always crumbles. Ryan Day hasn't proven me wrong yet. I don't care how much talent they have on their team. Give me the Ducks.
Good stuff. Tondo, what you got for us?
I don't know about Oregon winning the national championship. I think I will definitely sprinkle some coin, but there's other teams like Texas or even, Georgia that I'm going to have to make a decision tonight. But on the Oregon side, I do believe Dylan Gabriel is going to win the Heisman.
I like that. A little individual awards talk. Mine might not be the hottest take, and you can call me out for it if not. But kind of aligned with Oregon possibly winning the national championship. I think it's looking more and more like that there is I wouldn't say a strong, but there is a there is a visible possibility in that now that we have the Power Four and we have so many new teams in each of those conferences, the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC. I would be shocked if there weren't at least 2 teams new to their conference, to their power conference, that win said conference. I mean, I'm looking at Utah in the Big 12. I'm looking at a potential Texas in the SEC. I'm looking at obviously Oregon on, they're looking for a little bit higher, but I mean Oregon in the Big 12, and then the ACC. I mean, I think is very, very wide open. I mean, I don't really see Cal or SMU doing it this year, but I mean, you never know. I think we can get it. I think those three teams, are each strong contenders in their first year of the conference. Before we finish up, I do want to show our viewers, if you're watching this, we're going to post this on replay on August 29th on Thursday. At the same time, if I can show you our blog at houseenterprise.com, if I can get my, if I can figure out how to use my computer.
While you're doing that, Basil, how's our Tulane team looking?
Tulane. I mean, look, Tulane. I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. They lost some talent to the draft this year, but I'm excited to see what they do. I mean, I think the American is always an interesting conference. I mean, it's always going to be wide open whenever there's a big year of realignment, because I mean, the American in terms of group of 5 conferences is just a conference that a lot of schools get pulled from, and I think that just pushes Tulane closer and closer to the top every year. So I think they have their sights set on winning the American. I don't really see the American being the the group of 5 conference to get the auto bid in the college football playoff this year, but I still think it is going to be a very competitive conference.
Yeah, no one bet on Tulane this week. Damn.
Real quick, boys, this is kind of breaking news. I just read on ESPN. 76% of straight bets are on North Dakota State to beat Colorado this weekend.
Wow.
Upset
Holy
watch.
crap.
That's why I said it's the perfect upset watch, which is why Dion needs to kick the doors down.
Yeah. I mean, that's the environment that you want, right? Like, if I'm Deion Sanders, I'm like printing that out and putting it on above the locker of every player, right?
Definitely.
On the team. Like that's almost perfect.
That's insane.
Even
before
more perfect.
you look, Basil, I'm sorry, I ruined your wonderful transition. I'll try to cue you back up for it. No, I'm going to make one FCS hot take real quick, and I think Albany wins the national championship this year.
Wow.
That's going to be my super hot take.
And it starts with Long Island this weekend.
Yeah. Oh, God, Cole, this might be 70-0, man. My buddy Mike Falvo on the PA. No, they finally won an FCS tournament game. They went to the semis last year.
I know.
They beat Idaho on the road.
What would an FCS national championship do for the state of college football in New York and the Northeast? What's your hot take there?
Absolutely nothing.
I was gonna
say, for nerds like me, it might mean a lot.
I think it'd be cool, but it's they ain't gonna be.
Imagine if Bryant was a powerhouse when we were there and they won.
Yeah, that would be sick, but it's not like it changes Rhode Island forever. No one in Rhode Island is still gonna give a crap, as sad as that sounds.
No, yeah, that's true.
More realistically, what happened if URI won? Right?
Nothing.
No one in Rhode Island would still give a rat's ass.
It's got to be. It's a college basketball state.
No. But it's the same with Massachusetts being I don't know, what does it do if BC wins the ACC? I don't think it does much.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's so true.
Right? Because everybody's going to be whatever, the Pats are the balls, right?
Get the
think about it.
Game back on.
Harvard invented college football.
Harvard Stadium's the oldest college football.
Well, I mean, Rutgers, sure, but Harvard,
you walk into Harvard Stadium, it looks like the Gladiators, where they played, which it's in dire need of renovation. But
Babe Ruth played there.
Yeah.
Nickerson Field.
Oh, yes, straight down the road. Oh, man. Rich history.
I wish the Northeast was a college football town. I really do.
What's the closest college football region to us that do you call the the DMV, like I don't know if that's college football. You have to probably go even North Carolina.
They have high school.
Penn State.
Yeah, but I mean, like Jersey has sick high school football.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, high school's different, but
Like,
I agree.
College, I mean,
Pennsylvania, probably.
probably Penn
probably.
State being the closest. Like, yeah, Rutgers, but Rutgers isn't good.
No.
You got Pitt.
Good a couple
You got
years
Penn
ago.
State. You got Villanova in the FCS. They've had
Villanova's always had a good squad in the what are they, CAA or Patriot League for football?
CAA.
Yeah.
Damn, Bryant conference change in FCS this year. They were in the CAA. It's going to be very tough. Starts with University of Delaware this weekend, and you never know. Something tells me
it's cool to see Bryant get guys in the league now that they're starting to get that talent. You know, it starts somewhere.
they just got Coastal Carolina's quarterback who's going to start this year too. Is it because Zevi Eckhouse has moved on? Did he win the quarterback battle at Washington State? Do we know?
Yeah, I doubt it.
It was him and some stud from Campbell.
Was he actually like in like?
Oh my God! Absolutely, it was
To
him.
take
and Haj
Cam
Malik
Ward's
Williams.
old spot, right?
Yeah, it was to take Cam Ward's old spot. It was Haj Malik Williams from Campbell and Zevi Eckhouse from Bryant.
Damn.
I don't know who's winning that. Like, I guess we'll have to see who starts on this weekend.
The
But
Pac-2.
Zevi was too good at Bryant. Even though Bryant didn't do shit, he was too good.
yeah, that's true. They didn't do crap. They came in like 4th in the Big South OVC with 5 teams last year.
Yeah.
CAA on to bigger and better things. All right. Speaking of bigger and better things, Sam Basil has something for us. See, I told you I'd bail you out.
Exactly. Speaking of bigger and better things, what is getting bigger and better on a more consistent basis than the House Enterprise blog? So while we're here and while we're wrapping up the first episode of the 2024 Football House, let me take you on a little walk through some good stuff that we've got, and I'll tell you about some other stuff that we've got coming in the next couple days. So obviously, as you see here, we've got a little recap of our House Enterprise Fantasy Football League. We had our draft on Tuesday night. A lot of really good picks, so you can see our full team breakdowns there and how we determined our draft order featuring former NFL head coach John Gruden. That was interesting. Jordan Lauby all season long has been breaking down every single NFL team in their preseason, what he's liked, what they've added, what they've subtracted that could hurt them, their strengths, their weaknesses, and a prediction for every team's record in 2024. His most recent article was his 3rd-ranked team, the Detroit Lions. So the 2nd-ranked and the 1st-ranked teams are still to come before the preseason. So make sure you get caught up as soon as possible so you can get caught up for the finale of his preseason breakdowns. If you're more focused on the New York Giants, Kenny McDonald, heading into the roster deadline on Tuesday afternoon, he made a prediction for every player that he thought was going to make the Giants 53-man roster. He got 45 right. That's pretty darn good. So definitely check it out. Take a look at the guys that he got right and see where, he thinks they could really contribute to this year's Giants roster. And for the guys that he missed, see where, where their strengths can be used elsewhere in the NFL, either next season or later. Michael DeRosa put out his too early Big East preview. If you're a real college basketball nut, I guess the question for you is anything ever really too early? We've got some more breakdowns, some preseason breakdowns from Jordan Lauby. And then this is, for all of you college football fans, this is probably one of the most important things so far, our preseason top 25, as we've covered on the show, as well as conference previews for all 4 power conferences written by, one of our phenoms of the blog, Ohm Brown. He put out, very, very detailed rankings for the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC. Plus, he's got coming up on the blog this Friday a full breakdown of all of his top contenders for this year's college football playoff. So as you can see, we are firing at all cylinders here at House Enterprise. So make sure you keep checking out our website, house-enterprise.com. Make sure you follow us on all social medias. Just Google or just search House Enterprise on X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Make sure you give us a follow. Keep checking back. We'll be back here next week with a new top 25, some new picks for week 2 on the Football House. And with that, for Will Tondo, Jake Zimmer, Cole Hughes, I'm Sam Basil. This has been the Football House Show, and we'll see you guys next time.